being on auto accidents, ambulance calls in town, everything at the same time. Sean Pena has been promoted to probationary assistant chief. So we're still looking to fill the firefighter AM tier training. One applicant we had that was remained on our hiring list, I called him yesterday, and he turned down the job offer, which means we are back to actively seeking to recruit another applicant. As I reported earlier in the year, our ISO score went from a class 5 to a class 4. We're 1.5 points away from being a class 3 department. First time this department's ever been below a class 5 in the history of the fire department. Part of that's being double staffed has definitely helped. We've increased our training frequency from up to 1 to 2 times a week instead of 1 to 2 times a month. Doing all the hose testing, pump testing, hydrant testing with Carl's guys helping out. Annually has helped our response time, and using our new software pre-planning has helped. Our ambulance service is now able to run at paramedic level, AEMT level, or basic EMT level. We're a tiered service, which gives us flexibility with response on calls. We have a nurse in the volunteers who is able to run and use all the paramedic skills also, along with the paramedic who just left and went to the sheriff's office, is still actively participating in the volunteers. We did have one other nurse just pick up an application for the volunteers. Hopefully she filled that out, because the more people we get, the better. Along with that, volunteer numbers are still way below where we'd like to have them. We've been aggressively seeking volunteers, the word of mouth, Facebook posts. The volunteers are doing a weekly post. You've probably seen them if any of you got Facebook, pictures of everybody, trying to get the word out in the public. Bottom line is, volunteerism is down everywhere. You've seen it this weekend at horse races. They couldn't even staff their concession stand and stuff because nobody wanted to help anymore. It's an ongoing struggle. We're still working through it, and that'll continue. The new schedule we got implemented, the 4896, according to net, saved us roughly about $80,000. It's increased the annual salary of the workers. They work more hours a year than they did with the old schedule. But I do also believe this schedule has helped with projects being completed by having 2 consecutive days that they're there to work on stuff versus on a day, off a day, back a day. So that's definitely helped out. The ARPA money was huge in being able to upgrade SCBAs and other equipment that we had ordered and got online. Being able to purchase all the hydraulic equipment that we had out of the capital outlay was a great addition to the department. Our maintenance this year has been kept to a minimum, with myself and the staff doing most all of the maintenance. We've hardly had to farm out any maintenance, and most of what we have has been covered under warranty. Last year's training funds were mostly used to cover overtime expenses. This year, I've already got Jacob Stark scheduled to go to a week-long class in October to become a fire service instructor too. That'll help us with being able to proctor our own tests in White Pine County. Right now, we're having to rely on the state of Nevada to send somebody over, and we're at their mercy. We've got several instructor ones, so having him go up to that should help out. I'm trying to commit all of our training funds to our career staff that's going to be here for years to come, and that's going to benefit the department in the future. I don't see needs for me to be going to meetings and expos and just rubbing elbows with people for nothing. I want to commit this money to the staff that's going to be here long term and make it most beneficial. I don't want to be spending a bunch of money on me going to a bunch of classes and being towards the tail end of my career. We have a young staff right now. We have a lot of training to continue to get everyone where they need to be fit in their competencies. Like I said, we're still running one short also. We've been a very busy year so far. From January until today, we've run over 930 calls. When I started in 1998, we used to run about 128 calls in a year. Anybody got any questions, comments?
Good breakdown of what the fire department does. And all I want to say is I've known this guy for a long time, in the fire service for over 30 years. Several mines we work together. And I'll state my stuff I want to state, but I'm not going to vote on this. I'm not going to trying to think where I would jeopardize a friendship for a part-time job. Because I've got some feelings it's going to piss people off, and it's just the way it is. I've got an interest for the city. I know he's a great guy. I was in the department for 36 years. We would fought fires together. A lot of stuff he said is exactly right. It came through years of him knowing what we had to do. And that's why it was. That's what happened. So I'm just stating this out as fact. Everything he said is true. A lot of the calls are because we're running in the county now. That's a given fact. You know, we used to have 45 firemen waiting to get in there. It took me 2 years to get in. The retention problem, I think, is going to go away. I think you're going to find people staying in the department. You lost a lot of EMTs to a problem in your department, and you're losing them. They don't want to come back, or whatever the reason why. But so I have no questions. Everything he said is the truth. It's good there. You know, when Councilman Carson, I wish he was here to say his piece, because trying to go, he said the state average order was for the paid departments. Let me tell you something. Churchill Fallon, Pat knows that department quite well. They don't have a paid fireman. They got a paid mechanic. They don't have a fire chief. They're all volunteers. They run on NAS Fallon, Naval Air Station fires. They come into town there. So when somebody makes a project, we can't compare our department to even West Windover. They have casinos. We have no casino. We have to look what our community has. We're doing a great job with 20-some volunteers. If boom, something was to happen, we almost a few years ago almost went to a volunteer fire department because we were not getting no funding from the present administration at that time. The volunteers make you or break you. They won't get there a response time in 2.5 to 5 minutes. Volunteers won't if we don't have a paid staff. That's a given fact. But they'll get there and do the best they can. There's more volunteers, firemen, EMS than there are professionals. So people got to keep in mind where you're focused on this. They're doing a great job. There's no doubt about it. But I wish Mr. Carson would have been here to say that, because I have a problem of what I'm going to say later, and I don't want to lose a friendship over how I feel for the betterment of what I was voted in for the city. I had to get out of the fire department when I took the city council job because of a conflict that took over 2 years to get my slate cleaned, and it come back again to haunt me. So it's a great group of people if you have the right people, and that man is the right person for the job. So that's all I'll say at this time. So again, the way I feel, I'm not going to vote on this tonight.
Did you have other things you wanted to report on?
Yeah, so, one of the things I'm gonna go on is, leading up to probably what Councilman All was talking about. Give you guys a little history. I've been with this fire department now for 34 years, okay? I'm the most senior employee in the city right now, with almost 24 years full-time.
Second to Dale.
Second to Dell, full-time employee. Okay? That's I've devoted close to half of my life I've worked for this city, okay? I stayed working during the time we had a city council that did not negotiate with us. We went 4 years with no contract, we went with no raise, and then the next year I was got with an extra holiday. Several of those years, we got 1.5%, when everywhere else around was, getting the cost of living up around 4.5%, 5%. We were getting 1, maybe 1.5%. I respond after hours. I respond on weekends, holidays. When I'm on vacation time, if I'm in town, I leave and go on calls. Taking the task on right now of keeping our billing current. We have such a new staff up there right now. I cannot put any more workload on those guys until they get their basic skills they need, their advanced EMT completed, their firefighter 1 completed. And if I start piling stuff on them, then they're going to fail at that, and then we're back down to nothing. So I'm having to take on a bunch of these extra tasks until we can get them up to their speed to be a full-time firefighter. I think I've taken this department in a positive direction. Right now, with the 7.5% raise that went in last week, my assistant chiefs are making more money than me. Okay? Right now, the county fire chief makes about $10,000 a year more than I do, and has no people in the room, doesn't have near the workload to cover that I do. I'm getting towards the end of my career. I got about probably 3.5, 4 years okay? And then I'm at my maximum. And at that point, I'm gonna bail for sure, okay? But right now, for me to stay with everything that's going on, dealing with everything, you know, takes a lot away from my family. For me to stay, I'm gonna need a raise that's worth me staying. Because as you know, right now, there's nobody in the city that is even close to retirement. I'm it. I'm the only guy that's stuck it out. Everybody else has left, and you wonder why they left? I'm telling you why they left. It's money. You know, 6 months ago, when we were hiring the firefighters, we're competing with McDonald's. At $15 an hour we were offering. That's a slap in the face. Okay? Like I say, with the current salary you guys in both, yeah, I think it's still low. But, and even right now, if you look at it, a one-year assistant chief makes more than an entry-level fire chief. 11 years ago, our city clerk was making $70,000 11 years ago. Today, our city clerk is $3,000 above that. For years, the city has never, granted times come, I mean, it's all give and take, but I mean, you know, I can tell you over the years, the employees working for the city have taken a beating. And I've got the time to retire. I could have retired, and I'm not going to sit here and take a beating anymore for pennies on the dollar.
Pat, first of all, I'd like to say that from the beginning, when we hired you, I did some research on you. And I'm going to tell you that I think you have done an impeccable job at that fire department. I am so impressed. And I totally understand the issues you have with your salary. I mean, the only reason that Jennifer is $3,000 more than the 70 is because we jumped her more than she asked for.
Right.
You know, so she wouldn't have been even close to 11 years ago, you said it was?
11 years ago.
11 years, she still wouldn't have been there if we hadn't done that with Jennifer. So I am going to, I don't know what the number would be.
Well, let's let him finish, and if you haven't asked, right?
Yep.
For that.
I'll be straight up honest with you guys. I've looked at this list, and I've pondered it over and over, and I've looked at it, and I'm not looking at this as a percentage of what I want or whatever. I'm looking at it at the end of me of how long I've been here, how long I've devoted to been to this department. I watched you hire a guy within a year ago that's making brand new, not even a year in the city, is within $5,000 of what I'm making after I've been here for 24 years. Okay? I'd love to be right at the top of this pay scale again, but at the bare minimum, I'd like to have at least 105. And that gives me some reason to stick around another 2 or 3 years, because I'm going to tell you straight up right now, if I stay here 3 years, my plan is to be at that top wage. Because you got to look at it from my aspect, and when it comes down to my quality of life and retirement, every year I stay here, it only makes 2.67% more on my retirement. And when you break that down into day by day, and you guys know I got other businesses, it's pretty easy for me. I can make up that little bit of change, you know, go and run one of my businesses. You know what it used to be in the past, you can make up that money collecting beer cans. You know, so that's kind of where I would like to start with, and I'd like to hear what your guys'
So, just by way of some housekeeping here, with one absent council member and one abstaining, there will have to be unanimous decision among the 3 remaining council members
That's correct.
on whatever happens, just so you're aware. And then, if I might proffer as well, in my time as the mayor here, I appreciate every time I've called on Chief Stork, he's certainly stepped up to the plate. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a spouse in the volunteer department, and there's nothing quite as unnerving as waking up in the middle of the night to find your significant other gone on a call. And it does offer me quite a bit of consolation and comfort knowing that he's at least out with a good, well-trained group of people who work together, and the amount of trainings that they've bumped up has been significant, and I think that's a great thing. I mean, knowing that our department is well-equipped and well-trained, and situations they go into are not always just picking old people up off the floor. Sometimes they're pretty arrogant. Quite often they are. And, you know, I know my husband tries to spare me some of the details when he comes home, but you know, the mayor hears things sooner or later, and the fact that the department and the volunteers and our paid staff are willing to go into those situations as often as they are and as frequently as they do, and perform as well and as professional as they have is not only a point of pride for me, but it's a point of pride for our city. And I appreciate the work and the part that you've played in that, Chief Stewart, immensely. And with that, I will take comments from the council. The remaining council members will be voting on this. And then,
Mr. Mayor, I want to add some stuff too along. I'm not going to go over it.
I was going to get into the negotiation here in a second, but go ahead, because I've got a proposal because of a comment.
Okay, and I appreciate and understand everything Pat says. But when we hired him, he was our best candidate. And we were stuck with the no good wage scale, minimum maximum. The city's had that for 20 years or so. I recall one time when they came to the city clerk, we never got a raise. We're supposed to get an attorney and myself another week of vacation for the longer we worked there. We got 1 week because they couldn't afford to pay us more money. So I understand the pay scale is the problem with this whole thing. And what we've got going on now, since, you know, everybody's mustering up, we've given out raises over and above the budget, which averaged out to be about $5,000 for the last people. So I had 2 plans to throw out there at you. And you know, and Patty's right, the base pay of the career staff up there, he makes more than them. Their base pay, their overall pay is a built-in overtime because we went from the 48.96 out, which was an agreed upon. It helps to save the same time. That's how come I'll give you an example. Firefighter Pena, his base pay as it is right now, he's right from the treasurer, $77,282. You throw in the overtime, he's $88,199. That's more than the chief. You take the youngest one, Macy, her base pay is $48,900. Throw in the overtime, she goes up to $55,000. Okay, well, firefighter C, same thing. His base pay is $77,000. Overtime goes to $87,000. So the base pay is less than the fire chief. It's the overtime. When he was working as a paid guy, he was making more than the fire chief. I'm just trying to give you an example. These career guys, even in Las Vegas, Clark County, their paid staff makes way more than the fire chief. There's more people in the state make more money than the governor. So I don't really like to compare that, but with that being said, I have 2 ideas here. I have 2 out there. One of them, be like we did the last 3 people. Average out, including the attorney, he had money in his budget put in there. There was nothing put in the budget for the fire department because of that cotton picking pay rate, minimum maximum. You would never thought that, you know. Maybe he never had the foresight, or the treasurer never had to throw a number, I don't know. So here we are trying, Councilman Carson said right there at the last meeting, how can we keep going over the budget? How can we keep going? He's not here to defend his statement now. So my point being is, okay, so what do? We've got 3 individuals, 4 people. The attorney never got everything he wanted. So you go back, the first time I said, well, let's give the attorney the $5,000 like average and so forth. That didn't work. You know, we worked out the deal, works out good. So I'm just not grabbing a number out scared. I'm not saying the chief is either doing 105,000. He could have said 101, 102. So all I did was took his base pay, 85,000, and I took what the volunteers or the paid staff's getting, 10.5%. I added that to the 85. That brings you up to 93,925. So I thought,
Which makes me think that go peddle the county for a job because they pay more.
okay, so let me continue first. So then, once again, when he was a career staff member, there's only 2 or 3 of them that had the life safety inspection certificate. He's the only one that has it now. So throw another 2% on that, that's what they get. That pushes it, that's another $1,879, puts him at $95,804. $95,804. That's using numbers we've used in the city, sitting around this table. negotiated numbers with the union, and we sat there and said we're gonna give everybody another 7.5%. Not a grab out of the sky. And I'm not to be begrudging for the grab out of the sky. I'm saying, where are we gonna sit as the council and say enough's enough? Again, I'm not saying he's not worth it. What I'm saying is the council and the budget of this city, that's why I'm asking for another $200,000. We have got to tighten this up. We have a budget committee, it went south somewhere along the line. No oversight on what the committee would have done there. So, you guys can have your spill out, but that's what I'm saying. My thought was based on numbers that we dealt with the city. You can't compare the county. The county's got more money, they're getting federal money for Chief North. We're running in the county. We're doing their work, they're getting the big money. You know, Chief Stork, if he would have put in for the job, they would have snatched him up in a hurry.
Councilman
That's
Smith.
all I'll say.
Well, I know how much time fire chief puts in, and a volunteer. I lived with one for a long time, and we left a lot of table, and I'm gonna say that, I understand Jim, I understand the budget problem, but I can tell you right here, right now, we could not replace this man with $105,000 he's asking. Impossible. It's just not gonna happen. And I have to commend you, Pat, because, you know, you could have went to the top of that scale, asking for the top of and you didn't. You felt that the 105 was what you needed, and after 24 years, and after watching you work, you know, everybody says we have a volunteer problem, but we do. You know what the volunteer problem is caused from? And it's all over the country, but in White Pine County, it's because most people here are working 10 and 12-hour shifts and traveling an hour and a half each way to work. So they just don't have the energy or the time to become volunteers, so it's becoming more and more of a burden on your paid staff. So my feeling is, I would more than be happy to entertain a motion for 100,
Well,
move to, for
let's make sure we
105,000.
hear from the other council members too, before we get to the motion making. Councilwoman Zarko.
I'm going to stand in the gap here. I think that there is merit on both sides. I understand what Councilman Allberg is saying, in that we just need to anticipate and do a better job ahead of time for our budgeting. Being in a supervisory role, I understand what that means. I also understand people like fire chiefs and police chiefs and other people like that. We pay them for the pressure, for the unexpected things that come up, and for making sure that no one underneath them makes a mistake, because they are always liable for that mistake. And I also believe that if we were to lose him tomorrow, it would be a huge problem for the city. And I respect Jim in saying that this is very hard for him to do. But I also respect the fact that everyone is working hard, and we need to be a little more transparent in the budget. And I'm really not saying that we're not, but we need to be a little bit more anticipatory of what people might want or where they want to go, so we can start maybe even much earlier in our budgeting process. Because when these things come to us, it should be easy to say, yes, we feel that you deserve that. So I'm interested in what my other council member has to say, and then interested in what Mr. Spears has to provide.
Councilman Fontaine.
Well, my feeling is exactly what has been said already, in knowing Pat for several years, and knowing how the voting he has been in the past and everything else and whatnot. To even want to replace him, because not with what we would really offer. I think it's about time we become realistic in the city of Erie. We've got our employees on just day labor, one after another, because they can hire out elsewhere and make more money and whatnot. But when you have someone that is devoted as much as this Pat has been and whatnot, and the work he runs his department, makes sure that everything is in order and whatnot. I'm surprised that he didn't bounce earlier. I'm thoroughly interested, and I think he's done a fantastic job, and I'm in agreement, more or less, with what he's actually said.
So what is the pleasure of the council?
Well, I could move Pat up to $105,000. And the budgeting process, I think that when we talk about better planning, but I think one of the things we need to do, and years ago I did it, people work for me, is what it would cost me to replace it. And that's got to be considered in any kind of a budget thing you do, where you want to replace. And we have a lot of, our staff is underpaid as far as going around the whole state. But, and as full volunteer fire department from Churchill, I'm sure they have, because they have the 10 and 12 hour employees. But I have to, if we're not retired, we're working 12 hours in Pine County, 10 or 12 hours, that's the way it is. So I'm motioning for $105,000 for that.
Well, and I'm here to tell you that I ain't coming in trying to strong arm. I know there's been a rumor going around, I heard he's just gonna give us ultimatum. No, that ain't it, guys. You gotta look at this. I've got time invested here, and I can retire tomorrow. You're retired, you're enjoying the hell out of it, I know.
Yeah.
And I look at people, and I'm thinking, do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to be fishing with the retired guys? And I thought about it long and hard, and I thought, if I'm gonna keep doing it, it's gotta be worth it to me to do. And that's a number I come with right now, and I'm straight up serious with you guys. If I plan to stay the next 3 years, 3.5 years, I'm shooting for that top number. I'll give you that up right now in front, so the budgeting lady can start figuring on it, because, like I said, each year after this, it's 2.5% I'm staying for roughly. And you start breaking that down by the day, it ain't very many dollars.
So we already, not to cut you short there, Chief, but we do have a motion on the table from Councilman Spear. Do I have a second from one of the other three councilmen?
Also,
Second from Councilman Flangus. Is there further discussion or questions?
I would like to say one more thing. This is an extremely important position, and Pat, if you're going to stay, I would like to see you start some sort of program or some sort of training, because even if you leave in 3 years, you can't leave with no one that can replace you and doesn't know what to do. So my asking would be is that you start training somebody.
I've had that discussion with Jeanette already, and like I said, right now it is so tough because we have such a young department that we're working with on the full-time staff. We've had so many of them, left in the past, and it's going to be an ongoing thing to try to get somebody. Right now, I've really got 2 guys that have some, knowledge and career time behind them, and knowledge. So it's something I've had a discussion with her about, and it's just, we're going to have to, it's going to be a work in progress, trust me.
Is there any other discussion?
I mean, the bottom line, I'm going to throw that at you, yeah, I don't got a bunch of schooling and, but like I said, I leave and you guys got to start hiring from the outside. You've seen what's happened with the county. And you try to hire somebody that's got a ton of certificates, you're not even nowhere near the ballpark, not even close.
So, we have a motion and a second for 100, for a raise for 105. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
That's 3-4 with 1 abstention. Is anybody against? Motion carries. We appreciate you coming in.
All right, thank you.
Congratulations, Pat.
Thanks.
We will take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
Call this meeting back to order so we can get done tonight. Item 2, unless I'm mistaken on where we're at.
Yep.
Mayor Robertson, discussion for possible action, approval for mayor, city council members, and city staff to attend government infrastructure Summit, September 30th, 2022. The information you have in the packet is all the information I have.